So, welcome back to Grell Sound Lab, and today we are talking about loudness diffuse field tuning, and that is a big step from where we left off the last time. So maybe you remember we talked about free field sound tuning or the target curve and diffuse field, and that is completely measurement oriented. So you have just a measurement coupler and you measure the response, and then you put on a headphone and try to match it exactly, and then you say it sounds good. And the interesting part about it is that the science, you can always discuss about it, but then the actual experience with the headphones may be different. And luckily I have Axel with me here, who has a lot of experience with that. So good to have you, Axel.
Yeah, thank you, Jermo. So it's good to be back again. And yeah, so it's a long thing to talk about, all these target curves. And so it's good to look back where we have been the last time. So that was the diffuse field and the free field curves. So again, just to remember, so the solid curve is the free field curve, the diffuse field frequency response is a dashed curve, and yes, they are all measured with a dummy head. So at that time, mainly the B&K 4128 or the KMR heads. So and yeah, you just put these dummy heads in these fields, measure, and you get the curves out of that. And then, as Jermo said, you put the headphones on them and try to get one or the other curve, depending on the philosophy you are following. Okay, now, we are not dummy heads.
Well,
maybe. Okay, so I hope at least, yeah. So we perceive sound depending on the mood we are in. We are perceiving sound with our full body, so especially the low frequencies. And yeah, a lot of things are influencing how we perceive sound. So it's not only, we're not measurement equipment. And so in the 80s, late 80s at Sennheiser, there was a method they developed with cooperation with some institutes in Germany. That is called the Loudness Diffuse field method. So that means you compare, but you can't compare frequency by frequency. So it's you compare noise, third octave filters noise. So from 100 hertz up to 12.5 kilohertz, and so from a flat sound field, diffuse sound field, you compare that with what you're hearing from, or perceiving is the right word. So I was searching for the word, perceiving with the headphones. So you're sitting there, you have this diffuse sound field, you listen to 100 hertz center frequency filtered noise, like that, and then you put your headphones on and you press a button, then the loudspeakers are off. They need to be off, especially when you're listening to closed type headphones, and you hear the same third octave filtered noise from these these headphones, this device and a test, and you can change the volume of that headphone, and you try to find exactly the same thing, the same perceived level of loudness, and then you take away the headphones again and you switch on with your foot, switch your the loudspeakers, and say, okay, maybe the headphone was too loud, again the headphone, and until we have the right perception, so that at 100 hertz the headphones and the speakers have the same perceived loudness. Then you press a button, say, hey, that's okay, and then it switches to the next third octave, that's 125, and then 160, and so on, and so on, and so on, until you are at 12.5 kilohertz. It takes a long time. Mm-hmm. You have more or less experienced listeners. For some it takes an hour, for some it takes 20 minutes. Every test person is tested 3 times, mm-hmm. So to see if the values are, yes. Some test persons have one value here, one there, one there. Yep. Then this test person, you can't take that test person to in account for creating the frequency response curve of that. And some persons, oh yes, So on that slide, by the way, you can see typical frequency responses and these third octaves. And when the test person's values are very close together, okay, that person is in the pool where you make the average from. Yep. And there's a minimum of 20 persons who need to do that, to do these tests. And yeah, so this is how these frequency responses are made. So they make the average of these 20 test persons of their results, and then you got a good idea how this headphone would sound. For example, this one would be a little bit more bass heavy, so it has a light dip, a real dip, perceived dip at 9 kilohertz, and forget everything above in the very high frequency range, and in the very low frequency range at that time, the speaker system that was used was not able to do some the very low tones, and the very high tones are very difficult as well, because it's very dependent on how you place the headphones and everything. Yeah. So it's only valid for from 100 up to 12.5 kilohertz. Yeah. So this is loudness diffuse thing, where you have very good results in, and the difference. Sorry, I have no graphics of that, but it's very obvious when you compare the results measured just with a dummy head, and then compare that what is perceived by test persons. Test persons always want to have 5 dB more bass at 100 hertz than. So when you have a measured, or say the other way around, when you have a flat on the dummy head, the perceived sound is 5 dB too low at 100 hertz, and it's like, so it goes like that up to 1 kilohertz. So people want to have 5 dB more at 100 hertz. Yeah. And the reason for that is, so there are many papers, everything. I think it's not completely proven yet, but it's the body channel that is not present when you're listening with headphones. The dummy head doesn't know about body channel or something like that. Of course. And and the next thing, the next big difference you see is in the range where 3 kilohertz is, because the dummy head has ear canal resonance there. Mm-hmm. We have our ear canal resonance in that range as well. Yeah. But we don't hear it. So you can measure it at the eardrum. So when you use a probe microphone for these test persons, but you can't hear it because your internal equalizer, so you don't perceive it, makes it flat and at that point. So it's nothing where you have some peaks or something. Your hearing is more sensitive there, and it's good because you can hear really very little noises. I think that's something that claims helped the human race to live a little bit longer, because they can hear noises and that are dangerous for them. And so that is the difference between loudness and not loudness diffuse measurements, and but it is still not what is valid for everybody, because it's an average, as I said. So it's nothing where the individual perception plays a role. So 20 test persons are average to one response, and that's it. And there are responses for people who did very well. Their values are very, very close together, that are really very different to the others. Yeah. Because the geometry of the ear is completely different. It's depending a little bit, not only a little bit, it's depending on the headphones as well. Yeah. I mean, coming back to measurements, back in the day, first free field was a standard accepted way of tuning a headphone, and compared to modern standards,
that sounded sort of dull. So you had this huge dip at 8 kilohertz or something. And then the technology evolved, and the people like Günther Theile went in the direction of or philosophy of diffuse field. And there were a lot of headphones really constructed from that or designed for that, like the Biodynamic Classics or like some headphones from AKG. And they were really well designed because they fit the target so well. But by today's standards, they sound somewhat sharp. So you have these peaks at 8 or 9K. And for some people, it's still nice. So there are so many people that really are still like diehard lovers of the DT880 or 990 even. But then the funny thing is happened that to today's standard it is somewhat sharp, and then you enter into the diffuse loudness diffuse field products.
Yeah.
And by the standards back then in the 90s, they sounded then like they didn't have enough treble, because people came from like the biodynamics, and also like early Sennheisers probably also had some treble.
Yeah, of course, Sennheiser made that as well, and so with the diffuse field frequency, loudness diffuse field frequency response. So your as I said, the perception came in, and so you see a lack of bass.
Yeah.
So that is one thing. So by this for this pure diffuse field tuned headphones. So that was kind of philosophy as well. So lack of bass and too much of this in the range, say 10 kilohertz, somewhere there, 9 kilohertz. And so headphones like HD580, 600, even more 650 are matching this loudness diffuse field frequency response much better. And yeah, therefore that was a step ahead. And this is the reason why, I guess, why headphones like HD600, 650s are still seen as very neutral and so on by a lot of people. But one thing is, of course, headphones like DT770s or AKG 240 DFs are seen as a very, very good headphones by some people as well, and they are not bad.
Yeah, exactly.
They are not bad. But we all have our internal learned equalizers. So when we use headphone for, days, weeks, months, years, so we are used to that sound of that headphone. It has to sound like that, and we adapt to that sound. So we linearize it in our internal signal processing unit. And so when something sounds differently, even if it sounds more natural in a way, you're not used to that sound, and then it sounds, what's that? You're kind of irritated. But you can adapt to new sound settings as well. You learn that. So this is, in effect, the brain adapts very fast to things.
Yeah. And I mean, as a headphone enthusiast, I think that's also a sort of fresh way of approaching evaluating a headphone, because not every headphone was built for the exact same target. And I think that's a very good way to look at headphones, that you don't think immediately about, I don't know, about some biodynamic headphone, oh, it doesn't have enough bass, or it has too much treble. But these headphones have been very deliberately designed to follow a certain target. And for that target, they've been done really, really well. So I think it makes a lot of sense to take a step back and think about, okay, what did the people try to achieve? And I think that's, that's a very, let's say, intellectual enterprise. So it's not just I like it or I don't like it. but if you're already this deep into watching these videos, maybe that's a fresh perspective for you. And I think it maybe is a bit... it makes you a bit more open-minded, I think, because it's easy to say, I like it, I don't like it, but it's, I think, a bit harder to try to appreciate the designer's intent. And that doesn't mean that there's no bad headphones, but it means that there's different headphones that are good for different applications, and that it's always, in my opinion, admirable if somebody has followed a target with a lot of discipline. And the end result has really is a good match to that target.
Yeah. So two more things. One, you should remember there's a big difference between loudness diffuse field and just diffuse field.
Yes.
tuning. So when you look at what Jean Olive did in his comparisons, that's not loudness diffuse field things he was comparing with, but pure diffuse field things. And one more thing, it's more a fun fact, I just had been working in a headphone project where the test persons were all using one type of headphone that has a peak in the low mids. And so we gave them headphones which are flat there. And they all said, okay, the headphone sounds good, but it doesn't have enough SPL in the range of 400 hertz somewhere. And I said, okay, I know what these people are listening to normally. So it's good to know that. So we leave it like that because we don't want to replicate the failure of the other headphone. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that's again like this typical habituation. You just get used to it, and that's then normal for you, and everything else is not to your liking. But really, this habituation, it can change really fast. So once you start listening with a new headphone, after a week, it is normal.
Yeah.
Even if it has a lot of bass or a lot of treble or something. So unless you are really, really sensitive to some frequencies, then you can get used to almost anything.
Yeah, but sound quality itself, so things like getting the right cues for sound stage, for example, all that. So it depends on the quality of the whole thing. So when it's completely shitty, forget it.
Yeah. And I mean, that doesn't mean that there's no purpose in pursuing a perceptually flat sound, but it really, like doing this design challenge of doing it perceptually flat means that the brain doesn't have to just do it anymore. So in theory, it should allow you to enjoy the music without the brain doing too many extra steps. And we believe that the more perfect, like this illusion is you do for your brain, the easier it is to feel the emotion in the music. That's the idea.
So it's for the brain. You don't have to have your DSP running at 80% and consuming a lot of energy.
Exactly.
So maybe you just need your DSP running at 5 or 10%, and you can really relax and enjoy the music. And so this is what I think consumer headphones are made for. Of course, when you are listening to professionally to something and you want to detect something, you need to have the right acoustic lens, whatever you need. But for relaxing, you should not work to listen to music. So I think this is something where it's for relaxation or just being in the music, being connected to the music, to the artists. And this is something, by the way, that works very well for me with headphones like the AG1 Sennheiser, where there is such a direct connection to the music experience just with, Orpheus 1 or AG1, maybe some other good, some other good electrostatics as well. Yeah. So that is a very, very direct link. Yeah.
Okay, I think that wraps it up. So we had a bit of went away from the rails a little bit at the end, but we hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to see you the next time with Harman.
So next time, Harman Curve.
Yeah, exactly.
See you.
See you.